Hi everyone, it's Chris and welcome back to another video. Thank you for joining me today. I thought I'd share with you what I've been playing this week. So these are the records that I've been spinning this week. Now I don't always get a chance to play loads of records at home. In fact, when I listen to music the most is probably when I go out running or when I'm at the gym. But this week I've had the opportunity to play a few albums, and some of these I've played more than once. So tell me what you think about what I've been playing this week. So the first one is the debut album from Talk Talk called The Party's Over. This is from 1981, 82. Great little debut. In fact, this is sometimes overlooked because as a band they got kind of better and cleverer, I think, as they matured. But I think this is a tremendous debut. It was produced by, I can't remember his name, but it's produced by the guy who produced the debut album from Duran Duran. And a lot of people think it sounds a bit Duran Duran-like. I don't actually. I think it's quite different and better in some ways. Talk Talk's a great song. Today, that's a synth pop classic. And so there's the debut. So I really enjoyed going back to that. The Party's Over by Talk Talk. Good band. Next up, this is Hughes Thrall, a collaboration between Glenn Hughes, who played with Deep Purple as the bassist and the vocalist, and a guy called Pat Thrall, who had played with Pat Travers' band prior to this. I think he's played with a variety of players since. Stomy Yamashita springs to mind. I think he's even toured with Meatloaf. Good guitar player. And this is a really smart collaboration between these two guys. And I kind of wish they'd done more, but I think both of them were kind of troubled through drug use, especially Glenn Hughes. He probably can't even remember recording this, if I'm honest. This is from I think about 82. It's probably a similar time to Talk Talk. It's a really good, almost melodic rock kind of album. So the opening song, I Got Your Number, is tremendous. It's a good song, good rocker. The Look in Your Eyes is a good melodic song. Muscle and Blood, what a brilliant riff on that. Hold Out Your Life, Who Will You Run To Coast, which is a version of the Trapeze song that Glenn Hughes had recorded probably in about 71, 72 before leaving for Deep Purple. But it's a really good album, and I haven't played it for a long time. I saw Glenn Hughes about a year ago in concert, and he's still got an amazing voice for a 70-odd-year-old fella who has been singing a long time. Brilliant voice, and the vocalist is great, but really good album. Glad I played that again. The next album, I love this. I'd love to have seen this band live, and I'm jealous of anybody that did. And this is is this the third album by the Pogues? If I Should Fall from Grace with God. Just a good fun album. I think there's a couple of singles on this. I think Fiesta was a single here in the UK. I'm pretty sure it was anyway. And there's an instrumental called Metropolis. There's a kind of a Middle Eastern feel to Turkish Song of the Damned. There's Fiesta has got like a Spanish kind of feel to it, but it's got that Irish stuff as well, of course. Medley on here, Lullaby of London, Streets of Sorrow. But the two songs I like the most are the kind of really up-tempo. I think the Pogues, when they're at their best, are when they're really doing those kind of up-tempo raucous songs. So If I Should Fall from Grace with God is brilliant, and Bottle of Smoke, which is just... Oh, it's just a brilliant song. So I really enjoy going back to that. I'm going to just play a few more Pogues albums. This is the album that has Fairy Tale of New York, so I'm guessing we'll be hearing a lot of that. In fact, that's in the shops already. In fact, I remember going into a shop not far from me called The Range, and they were playing Christmas music on August Bank Holiday, which is bizarre, isn't it? Anyway, next up is this. This is, I think this band is from like Cleveland. Anyway, they're an American band, The Gods. I remember this being a recommendation from Jeff Barton back in the day in Sounds. I remember buying this. I probably haven't played it for about 20, 30 years, I shouldn't think. Real biker metal, as you can see by the kind of cover and maybe some of the titles. Cross Country is a good song. They do a version of Radar Love, Golden Earrings, Candy's Gone Bad, which is pretty decent. Gotta Keep It Running is decent rocker as well. It's produced by Don Brewer from Grand Funk Railroad, and it has a bit of a feel of that kind of band. But yeah, it's all right. Probably a reason I haven't played it, but it's okay. Decent stuff. Next up is a massive sounding album. So this is from, I think, 85. And I bought this in 1985 because there was a song on here I absolutely adored, and I still do adore it. The band is Killing Joke. The album is Nighttime. The song that I loved, and the reason I bought the album is, of course, Love Like Blood, which I think is one of their best songs. It's just the production on it and the guitar sound and the drums, oh, it's just brilliant. 80s is on here as well. That was a single for them, and that was the song that Nirvana ripped off for Come As You Are. The riff is almost the same, but you know, Nighttime, Kings and Queens, Darkness Before Dawn, there's some big sounding songs on here, and it's probably, is this the most accessible Killing Joke album? Possibly is, actually. And I love it for it. I don't think it's bad that bands suddenly become a little bit more accessible and a bit more polished. But Love Like Blood, for me, one of the greatest songs of the 1980s. Another 1980s album next, by a band that made their name really in the 70s, Black Sabbath. So this was originally going to be a solo album from Tony Iommi, hence the kind of look of the cover. It's called Seventh Star. I think the record company, that was going to be a solo, but the record company put pressure on Tony Iommi to make it a Black Sabbath album, but it's not really. It is a solo album, and it features on vocals Glenn Hughes, who he did a few things with, an album called Fused and something called the Depth Sessions, which are pretty good and really heavy, actually. And there's some brilliant songs on here. I think this is a really overlooked rock album. You know, where's it sit in the kind of Black Sabbath kind of Hall of Fame? Well, probably lower down than a lot of their famous albums, but you know, In for the Kill, Turn to Stone, Seventh Star, Heart Like a Will, there's some really good songs on here with fantastic vocals and absolutely brilliant guitars you can imagine. I know that Tony Iommi often says that Glenn Hughes is the best vocalist that he's ever worked with, and there's some real evidence of that on Seventh Star. Great album. This is from 1986, tremendous album. Another album I revisited is this one, Praying Mantis, Time Tells No Lies. This is from 81, but they were a band that had been going for a while. They were part of the new wave of the British heavy metal thing, and this album came out a little bit later. Lovely Rodney Matthews drawn cover. I do like that. And there's some good songs on here. The kind of melodic end of the new wave of British heavy metal, so not really heavy metal at all, quite kind of Wishbone Ash orientated and influenced. So Lovers to the Grave is a brilliant song. Panic in the Streets, tremendous. Flirting with Suicide is also really good. I saw them live. They supported Triumph, and also saw them at Reading in 1980. They're a decent band, but they just didn't have the success that the others, Def Leppard, Iron Maiden, Saxon had. Next up is an album that's often seen as a classic of the 1980s. I remember seeing this band. I was at uni at the time, and it was in my last year, and they were on, I don't know if it was Old Grey Whistle Test, or they were on a music programme, a couple of music programmes, but I remember seeing them on one, and they smashed up their, quite poorly, but they smashed up their kind of equipment. It wasn't The Who, but it was certainly that kind of feel to it. And then I saw them on another programme. Oh, what was it called? It's the one with Paula Yates. I can't remember what that was called. And I didn't really get them at all. And I remember buying this album. I hadn't long been married, so it was probably in the early 90s. And I bought this album because I was in a record shop, and the guy who owns the shop was just putting some stuff in the racks next to me. And I was stumbling through, and I came to this album, and he said, "You've got to buy that, it's a classic." And I thought, I remember seeing it on telly, and I thought they were crap. But I bought it, and I do quite like it. Psycho Candy by Jesus and Mary Chain. Lots of people will see this as one of the most influential, greatest albums of the 1980s. I don't see it as that. I see it as quite a fascinating album. People regard this as noise pop or, shoegaze or whatever. And I remember seeing them on telly and thinking, what is that about? With the kind of big hair and the kind of looking at their floor and not looking at the audience. And there's some real noise to this. There's some real distortion, feedback. This is an album that obviously is very influenced by stuff like the Stooges, possibly, certainly Velvet Underground. And when I mean Velvet Underground, probably the White Light, White Heat kind of era. So songs like Sister Ray, for example, would have that kind of, that distorted guitar sound, which is featured really highly on this. So a couple of brothers on this, Jim and William Reed, on guitars and vocals, and they create quite a noise. But underneath that noise is some half-decent songs, quite melodic songs. This is a band that probably were influenced by 60s pop as much as things like the Stooges or Velvet Underground or MC5 and that kind of garagey sound. But loads of songs, I think there's about 7 on each side. But yeah, So I've really enjoyed going back. I don't think I'm going to be buying anything else by them, but I've had this in my collection a long time, and I very rarely play it. But I really enjoyed playing that. I played it about 3 or 4 times this week, so good stuff. A couple more. Next up is from 1980. It's one of those Jimi Hendrix posthumous albums. This is called 9 to the Universe. And I would imagine that Jimi Hendrix is probably turning his grave thinking that this has been released, because essentially this is a number of little jams that have been recorded before, you know, any songs were created from it. It does feature Billy Cox and Buddy Miles. It also features a guitar player called Jim McCarty. And it features Larry Young. Now, Larry Young had played on Bitches Brew. He played keyboards with Miles Davis, and also played with Tony Williams' Lifetime as well. And I know that Jimi Hendrix had quite often like jammed with Tony Williams and Larry Young and so on. But can you and John McLaughlin? But can you imagine Jimi Hendrix playing with Miles Davis? I would have loved to have heard that, because you know John McLaughlin playing with Miles Davis was immense. Imagine Jimi Hendrix. Could they have done it? I don't know. What would it sounded like? It may have sounded like some of the things on here, kind of jazzy little jams. You know, young Hendrix, a jam on here with Larry Young, which is recorded in '69, is quite jazzy, and I think it would have been a brilliant collaboration. But anyway, I quite enjoyed that. I like jamming guitar, so yeah, that's great. And the last one, I don't have very much reggae, but I really enjoyed this album. This is Handsworth Revolution by Steel Pulse. So this is a band from Birmingham, in fact obviously from Handsworth, the area in Birmingham. This came out in '79, was it? Possibly, on Island Records. A really good slice of UK reggae, full of kind of political lyrics, full of stuff about racism and social injustice, and a call to arms, if you like. Prediction, great song. Handsworth Revolution, the opening track's a great song. It's a really good UK reggae album, and I thoroughly enjoyed going back to that. I've not played that for years. So there you go, there's the songs I've been listening to this week. What have you been listening to, and what do you think of the ones that I have? And I'm sure I'll be back sometime soon with another video. Cheers.